Okay, so let's talk about sex, right? Let's talk about the future of sex. So, I don't know if you've thought too much about how technology impacts your sexuality, but today I'm going to introduce you to sex tech, a $30 billion industry that you may not know that much about, or you may think you know a lot about, but I'm here to surprise you. So, in 2019, we have teledildonics, super connected sex toys that connect via a Bluetooth or Wi-Fi connection that can connect you to just about anyone, a partner, a lover, a stranger on the internet. We have Harmony AI, the first sex-capable AI that has 12 different personality types, and she'll even recite you poetry. And we have Gatebox AI, similar to a virtual assistant, although she sends you quite emotional text messages while you're at work. And then we have the less obvious examples of sex tech. So we have here Mend, an AI chatbot that helps you get through heartbreak using a specific algorithm for 3 months and tracks the emotional state of your heart. And we have Dipsy on the other side here, which is an app that just raised $5.5 million, and it's short erotic audio stories just for women. And it caters to women's arousal, which is a lot more auditory than it is visual. Then we have apps like Beam, which is a virtual sexual health clinic where you can store your STI results and you can also share them with prospective partners. And we have the emoji beta. Maybe obvious? This is the eggplant emoji-themed vibrator. Guys, welcome to the wonderful world of sex tech. I've been studying the intersection of sexuality and technology for the last 3 years. And what I found is that technology is radically changing the way we date, the way we fall in love, and the way we experience intimacy. When I talk about sex tech, I just want to start by giving you the definition of sex tech. So sex tech is defined as any technology designed to enhance intimacy. This intersection here. So what does that mean beyond the obvious examples that we have, like robots and virtual reality adult entertainment? Well, sex tech, when we talk about sex tech, it means sexuality. So under sexuality, we have things like education, we have things like health, sexual assault, crime and violence reporting, as well as pleasure, as well as relationships and gender identity. And when we look at the scope of sexuality like that, and we mix it with technology, on the other side we have technology that is, of course, emerging technology, like we've been discussing here at Brain Bar, whether that's artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, but we also have technology like websites and apps and products like emoji betas that are fairly simple to use, but are also called or defined as sex tech. Here is the big bad landscape of sex tech. It's actually much more than I think the media often reports, which is largely focused on virtual reality porn and robots, often women making vibrators. But here you can see under this landscape, which was created by futurist Ross Dawson, another Australian, is that sex tech encompasses so many different things. So what I want to do with my 15 minutes left here today is take you through those 5 major categories. So we have remote sex, robots, immersive entertainment, augmentation, and virtual sex, so that you walk away from this talk understanding what sex tech is and how diverse it can be in its applications. So the first one is fairly obvious. In fact, probably a lot of you have come into contact with this sort of sex tech, remote sex tech, and that's because the majority of us are in some sort of long-distance relationship or using technology to communicate with partners or to find partners. So remote sex tech incorporates that first example I showed you, which is teledildonics or remote-controlled sex toys. But sex tech also, for remote purposes, includes things like Skype and FaceTime. And it's not what you think. While when I do talk to teenagers, they are losing their FaceTime virginity, and that's a really big deal to them. Also, there's trends in terms of maintaining intimacy in long-term relationships, a trend called background Skyping, which you may have done yourself. Background Skyping isn't having a really meaningful conversation with your partner over FaceTime or Skype. In fact, you're not really even talking to one another. You put your computer down or your phone down, and then you go and do something else. And it's like a portal into that other person's life as well. And so we're finding a lot more people are using background Skype as a way to develop intimacy by sharing the most mundane details of their life. But it builds trust and it makes you feel closer to that partner. Not so sexy, but definitely an example that is affecting more and more of us. Now, other things for long-distance relationships beyond the obvious sex tech is using immersive technology or haptic technology to really feel your partner. So these are being put in pillows, in wristbands, even on your iPhone. There's a new, fairly new, hasn't quite taken off yet, application called the Kissinger, which you put on your iPhone. You can look this one up when you go home, and you kiss it, and it's these lips. And the person, wherever they are, that's got the other side of the Kissinger, it's like they are feeling your lips and you're kissing them. Don't know why it hasn't taken off yet. Kind of weird. This is heartbeat, so this will connect you to your partner and you can feel their heartbeat, which is sort of like a connected pillow is also the same thing, sharing your partner when they're sleeping at night. And these are sort of the things that we're seeing that are foreshadowing this growth in long-distance relationships. Ironically, technology has separated so many of us with our careers and our jobs now, but it's also bringing us closer together. VR is something I'm really excited about after researching this for a couple of years. I think the most obvious VR is obviously in porn, and we see a lot of porn driving innovation in terms of just any technology really, live video streaming, online payment systems, and certainly there's some examples in virtual reality. But what virtual reality will be really good at is sex education. I think we can all agree we probably had a pretty average sex education. I know I did in Australia, and wherever I go and talk in the world, people say, you know what, I had the worst sex education, I wish I had better. And so what virtual reality is doing is creating this immersive, private environment where you can fully explore and learn about your sexuality and how to be a better lover. Now, that example I showed you with the cartoon is an example from a university, Georgia Tech in the US, that are designing sex education for college-age women. They're gamifying it. You go through a nightclub and you just learn how to say no, basically, to a guy, which is really useful to learn consent, right? Because majority of the time, especially during college, you're just in that situation and then maybe getting into an uncomfortable situation. So being able to practice that situation, being able to practice consent first in virtual reality and then when you get to the real world often makes us all better humans. Now, I mentioned porn before, and that's because it is driving a lot of the virtual reality innovation, even though most of it is shot in 180, it's not 360, and it's not fully immersive. What we're seeing in the industry is they have a lot of money and they're driving other applications. So Virtual Sexology is a program that was designed by Budapest VR, one of the top 5 porn companies, but the program was written to make you a better lover. So it was actually written by a sex therapist, and there's one for men and there's one for women. So it's obviously adult sex education, but the programs are really interesting. Male one runs you through a program to manage erectile dysfunction, and the female one manages really, for women, getting in touch with their bodies, which is something that women struggle with a lot. So this is a really interesting application that we're seeing, and I think ultimately what will be really interesting in the field of VR and sex tech is this idea of education, is this idea which is experimenting here in the ability to swap bodies. So what will it be like when you put that virtual reality headset on and suddenly you look down and you're a different gender? OMG Yes is using touchscreen technology to teach women about how to bring themselves to orgasm, and it's also obviously for their partners. Now, what's a really interesting aspect of this sex tech is not only, wow, that's really cool, you know, I can teach myself new techniques, but actually what OMG Yes did was a study of 2,000 women from the ages of 18 years old to 95 years old. And they asked them, well, how do you bring yourself to an orgasm? And remarkably, this sort of research had not been done before, and it was done in 2016. So unfortunately, it took us until 2016 to be able to study how women bring themselves to orgasm. There's plenty of research, however, for men. But what they did out of that study also is they identified 12 different patterns of how women were essentially masturbating. They took that data, they put it into an app, they created videos on these 12 different techniques. They now have another season coming out. I'm sure it's another 12 different techniques. But what's kind of neat about this and neat about the sex tech industry is they're also giving language to things that we'd never had language around this sort of stuff before. You know, we have like pop culture language, or at school we learn anatomy, but we never have language to give to be able to talk about this stuff. It's really hard to talk about sex to your partner for the most part, but when you start using sex tech like this, you suddenly have language. It becomes a lot easier to talk about pleasure and sex. This is a big one. This is actually robotics and artificial intelligence. I get asked about this the most. It seems the most far off. And what I want to illustrate to you, we're going to play a video of Gatebox. Has anyone heard of Gatebox before? Great. You're going to love this. So Gatebox is a virtual assistant similar to Google Home or Amazon Alexa. She controls the temperature in your house. She controls the lights. But she also does some other interesting things. And I want to show you this example because I want you to bear in mind that this isn't that far off. And in fact, Gatebox itself, the first version, sold out in a week in Japan in 2017. So I'm going to jump off the stage. We're going to play the English ad, the promotion they had, and you can get a feel for what Gatebox actually does.
朝ですよ。起きてください。ねえ、起きてってば。おはよう。
おはよう。
あ、今日雨が降るかもしれないから傘持って行って。急がないと遅刻しちゃうよ。
行ってきます。
行ってらっしゃい。気をつけてね。
19ページ、商品のラインナップについての。
おかえりなさい。
なんかさ、家で誰かが待ってるっていいもんだな。さっき思ったんだ。帰ってくるとき。おやすみ。
おやすみなさい。
So, for the bargain price of $2,600, you too can have a Gatebox. Now, if you didn't see Gatebox or it was hard to read the subtitles up the back there, essentially Gatebox is a blue cartoon anime girl in a glass cylinder. As I said, she controls everything in your home from electricity to temperatures, but she also sends you emotional messages like, I miss you, come home, while you're at work. And she's been marketed as this replacement girlfriend. And so I share that because it's kind of creepy to us, but it's also not that far away. I think when we think about our attachments to technology, we're already so in love with our smartphones, it's hard to separate from them, that actually this might not be such a stretch or such a strange thing to have things that we also fall in love with and that do functional, practical things for our home and share an intimate life with us. Again, a great example of this is Harmony AI. This is from Real Dolls in the US that started out making dolls and have now partnered with Sanctuary AI in Canada, and they're called Robotics because the dolls have technology inside their heads. They have an app that you can use so you can program her personality type from funny, shy, charming, cute, submissive, and rate it from 1 to 3. And she will remember your pizza order. So if you tell her that your favourite pizza is pepperoni, and then you come home from work one day and you're like, you know what, I feel like a hamburger. Well, Harmony's going to say, well, why do you feel like a hamburger? Your favourite pizza is ready. It's a pepperoni pizza. That's your favourite. Don't know how I feel about that, but I have worked with Matt McMullen on the Harmony and talked to him about it, and probably the most surprising thing I want to share with you about that, because I also feel uncomfortable about that sort of functionality, is that the majority of his customers are humans, people obviously, that have gone through some sort of trauma. So whether that's PTSD or they've suffered some disability or something where they can't relate any longer to humans, this is something that really steps in and solves companionship for them. Augmentation is obviously about augmenting your body type. I think a great example of sex tech in this area is transplant surgery. So instead of relying on things like organ donors, we've got 3D bioprinting. This is the first penile transplant that was given to a cancer survivor who had to have his penis amputated. We also have uterus transplants. There was one done in the States last year, unsuccessfully, but 2 uterus transplants done in Sweden. And so what's really exciting about technology is it's able to help us live more enhanced sexual lives, and this is a really important example. We also have augmentation for pleasure. So in Utah, Rich Lee developed the Lovetron 9000. The Lovetron 9000 is a vibrating chip that he's inserted above his pelvis that makes his whole area vibrate. So that's more for pleasure. And then we have things for sexual assault. So in South Africa, this is called the rape axe. So it's a female condom fitted with barbs, which sounds kind of horrific, and women are encouraged to wear it out on a blind date or to a party or something to avoid being raped. Now, while that seems shocking here in South Africa, a rape occurs once every 17 seconds. So this is a shocking statistic, and this is an example of where technology has come up and trying to solve a problem. It's a nurse in a hospital that's seen a number of victims and said, how do we solve this problem? So I really like that example of sex tech. There's also ONUT, which is to deal with painful sex, and that's developed in the US by a young woman who is experiencing painful sex. Turns out 75% of women have experienced painful sex in their lifetime. And ONUT is fitted, it's a squishy device, I actually have one here if anyone wants to see it, that limits the depth of penetration. Sure, why not? I mean, the cool thing about sex tech is it doesn't have to be creepy or weird. Like these sort of things that are being developed, I don't know, you wouldn't know what it was. It could sit on your coffee table, right? And no one would know. So I think it's more approachable. And that's sort of my goal too, is looking at how do we make this stuff more approachable? We already find it so difficult to talk about sex. Perhaps technology will enable us to talk about it more with people that matter. The last one is Gitty. And that is a wearable for erectile dysfunction. It's sort of stepped in place. It was launched on Kickstarter, I think, 2 weeks ago, and in place of in the US where Viagra and those sorts of drugs are now on subscription service and the rate of people ordering them is growing. This is an alternative. You don't need to use it all the time, but maybe you want to use it once or twice. So the interesting thing about this sex tech, I hope I've given you the broadest overview so you understand it's not just robots, but they are an important component, is that a lot of the people behind the sex tech industry today are women. That's something that I really want to highlight, other than the fact that when we see those products, they're kind of approachable, they're easy to use, they're crowd-funded, is that a lot of women are stepping into this space to be able to design products for themselves, whether that's OMG yes, or in fact this ring that I'm wearing that's fitted with haptic technology. It's a conversation piece because it's also a vibrator. So these are really interesting examples. I hope I've given you some surprises about what sex tech is, and I look forward to answering some tough questions. Thanks for having me. All right.
So, why did you use the word intimacy? It's in human relationships. And some of the sex tech seems to me is a replacement and an alternative to human relationships.
Sure, and that's why I use the word intimacy. So I think there's the sex tech that's strictly for sex, for enhancing sex, but then we have examples like Gatebox and AI, as you've seen, that are almost getting to that line of replacing intimacy. There are many different things under the umbrella of sexuality, and there are many different reasons to have sex, right? Liz?
Thank you for your
Okay.
presentation.
Right.
My question would be that, don't you think that Gatebox is an unhelpful technology because it helps isolate people more and more, especially in the Asian countries?
I totally agree with you. I think this is a good follow-on question. I think the issue is that we're designing technology for intimacy when in fact we shouldn't be worried about whether Gatebox is going to fall in love with us or designing that to make us love us. What we need to be designing for is how humans can get better at intimacy themselves. Do you agree?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Okay, let's make some sex tech for that, don't you think? Yeah, because a big struggle today in humanity is we're not designing for humans to be more empathic or more intimate with each other. So, thank you for your question. I think we're all on the same page. Whoa. Hi.
Hi, I'm just wondering, what about the potential public health impact of these technologies? So I'm sure you've already read the peer-reviewed evidence about the harms of the porn industry and how it's now treated as a social policy issue. So, I mean, the cat is pretty much out of the bag. For example, with the sex robots, how about this argument, that it removes consent, that now, it stabilizes the subordinate position of women within the sexual act?
Yeah. So there's big arguments, and the issue in the industry at the moment is it's largely the Wild West. So there's really no one talking about the ethics of sex tech, and so we have campaigns that are popping up in the UK against. Against the campaign against sex robots, and because it's largely unregulated industry at the moment, we still have sex robots being manufactured out of China and out of the US. So it's something that
child sex robots as well.
Yep.
Yeah, it's legal in some countries.
Yeah. So, and we largely don't have any research about the impact of these robots and whether they would be good for something like pedophilia and manage it, or it would be something that would be disastrous. So we need to develop some infrastructure around sex tech industry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm so thankful that you brought this topic here. I'm a teacher, so I find sex education one of the most important things. So mine is more of a request than a question, because I wanted to come in person to ask you about all the sex ad availabilities, websites, and things like that. But then I thought that it might not be interesting only for me, but for everyone else. So my request would be that can we put it somewhere, the web page of the Brain Bar or somewhere available for us, so that we as teachers, parents, or anybody could use in sexual education, that is available and it's yeah. It
I
would
tell
be
you what
great.
I'll do on my website, futureofsex.org and /brainbar, and then I'll put all the resources that I've talked about today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Cool.
Hey.
Hi.
So you talked about sex robots,
Yeah.
and my question is, do you consider having sex with a robot as it is a cheating?
This is a great question. I mean, and you know, it's my personal view. It could be your personal view. I think I get asked this question all the time in media. Media are obsessed with it because there's this grey area now between robots and having sex with yourself, and then robots, and then having sex with someone else. And what's going to happen, just like with any other technology, right? When we decide, is porn cheating or is porn not cheating? It's a conversation between you and someone else. No one's got the definitive answer. It's like, how do I feel like it? Well, I actually don't think it's cheating. What do you think?
Maybe not.
See? Everyone's going to be different, right? Thank you for answering a
maybe not.
question.
Thank
You
you.
answered your own question.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
Strangely enough, I was actually about to ask a very similar question to what he just asked.
Everyone loves a robot.
Because my question
trying to avoid
was meant to lean towards the, like mentioned, the relationships about using the a way to communicate with your partner in a different country. And I
Kelly,
was just
do you
wondering, like, how do you find the balance? Let's say, for example, if your husband decides to use the gate box
Right.
while you're away, then how would you find the balance? Because then that guy may end up getting some kind of like emotional
Falling in love with
attachment
it.
towards the gate box, and then like how do you think you find the balance between that in a relationship, for
Then that
example?
relationship's over. But yeah, I think it's a really good, it's a valid question, and there's no answers because we don't have enough experience with the technology. What we see is some people are attracted to technology in a way that you and I might not be attracted to technology, like robosexuals, and they actually prefer to be with a robot or be with Gatebox than to be with a human. But people, when you start integrating it into your life, again, it's like something like pornography, where it's like, well, this is something we as a society haven't worked out, and it's more an ethics question than it is up to the people that are creating the technology. It's up to us as a culture and a society to decide, do we want this? Is this something we want to navigate in relationship?
Thank you.
What do you think?
I agree.
Yeah. Oh, hi.
So this is a question that follows on with the gatebox conversation. But if I remember correctly, there's a kind of a demographic crisis in Japan and part of China where you have a lot more men than women because they're seen as more financially viable offspring to have. So I believe that's a part of why gatebox is really finding a seat in the East Asian countries. Do you think that that type of product will have any success or find footholds in the Western world?
Yeah, so in Japan they have a concept called herbivores, which is 18 to 25-year-old men that don't want to have sex and that don't want to date. And a lot of that is to do with, you're right, the economic crisis and the GFC, and actually them falling out of favour and women entering the workforce after the GFC and gaining independence. And it's actually a shame thing that they don't want a woman to upstage them in their relationship. So this is one factor, social and economic factor, that's feeding into the population crisis in Japan. Will it take off in the US or in Hungary or in Europe? I think we've already seen some examples of people becoming really attached to technology, whether that's smartphones. In the military, they use like robots that detonate bombs, and when the robots combust, Marines hold funerals for them. So they're crying and they're emotional. So I've seen people are actually, we do have the capacity to fall in love with technology, but let's hope that by having these discussions that we're not going to do a complete replacement. Oh, wow, okay.
Hello. So my question is
Hi.
that don't you think that for men, this gatebox will set higher expectations, what they will
Really?
search for women?
Do you think maybe to control the temperature in your house and like have the lights on when you get home? Maybe. But I also think it's very different to what a woman offers, or what a human offers. So if we think about technology versus humans, technology is hard to replicate the right side of your brain. So things like creativity, imagination, intuition as women, a sense of mystery, these are things you can't program into technology. And so that's my hope, is like, if we just keep focusing on the right side of the brain, the technology can do the algorithms, that can do the calculations like our left side of the brain actually much better than humans. But I think that's where we have the stronger foothold.
Last question.
Hello.
Hi.
And I was wondering if, if these sex tech solutions develop to a point where they can actually provide long-term solutions for humans and making a lot of the population isolated. Do you think that it can be an ethical solution for global problems like overpopulation?
Oh, yeah, I mean, so the people, yes, in a way. If you pair up with a robot, you're not going to procreate. That's nice, that's evolution in itself, because everyone that's attracted to robots and has robot partners will die and not have more children. I think the argument is, and what we're seeing at the moment emerging is, we have all this technology, we have these technologies that are great for like people in rural and remote areas, maybe companionship, and that's a better than. So that technology is better than nothing. Like if, we give this robot to grandma in a nursing home and it keeps her company, better than nothing. In what?
Or for a prisoner.
Or for a prisoner, better than not having anything. But the dilemma becomes when it becomes better than everything, or better than anything, or better than anyone visiting them. And I think this is the thing, the crossroads that we're at now is like, when does it move from becoming better than nothing to becoming better than anything? And what can we do about that?
That was a great last question. Thank you very much.
Thanks for all your questions. Cool. Wow. Thanks, guys. Thank you.